Good morning, First Congregational Church of Sunderland. Good morning, friends. Good morning, everybody who's decided to watch this, and thank you for watching. It's Reverend Sam Wild, and I'm going to share with you my message from the service I created for First Congregational Church this morning. I'm not going to share the whole service in this format. I've written it all down and shared it with the members of the congregation, but I'm going to just share this message with you, and it's a message called Receive and Believe. And as in the service, I share a quote, a reflection by somebody named Phillips Brooks. And in it, he writes, he tells us, actually, it's kind of like a command. He says, don't just say, Christ is risen, but I have risen. And I think that's a very powerful statement. And I was thinking about that idea during the week. You know, what is this season of Easter for us? And the idea that Easter is a place where we really have our minds completely changed had been coming to me over and over again, that resurrection is a different way of thinking. So a few months ago, I went to see Hamilton on Broadway. This was Tommy's dream, and it was very exciting to go there and see it with him, and it was an incredible performance. We were packed, I literally elbow to elbow, and our knees were up against the chairs that were in front of us. That's just how the theater's designed. And the theater was sold out, as it was every single night. It took many, many months to get these tickets. So there we were watching this incredible performance. And our job was to be the audience. Now, our job was to clap and to enjoy it and to be witnesses to it. And I think that a show can change people, and it can certainly affect people. But how different would my experience have been if I had been the person on the stage versus the person just sitting and watching? Another thought came to me. You know, these days, if you want to have music, you put on your iPod or your YouTube or anyway, there are so many different choices. I can't remember all of them. And we can get any style, any genre, any kind of music that we want, absolutely. But 100 years ago, if you wanted to make music, if you wanted to hear music, you would make music. And the other day in our online schooling, my second son was playing Ode to Joy. He had to first watch it, and then he had to play it. Totally different experience, watching and the little thing beeping, going along, bouncing along to show him what notes to play, versus actually making that music. So how different are these two experiences, to consume music versus produce music, or to hear music versus make music? I think that those two examples of being in the theater and making music illustrate pretty well that there's a great difference between being the actor and being the audience. And I think this is the case with resurrection. You know, at the beginning of the resurrection story, there are those who come to the tomb and hear about Jesus' rising, and they are just spectators. They're witnesses. They're just the audience taking in the information. And there's no doubt about the fact that none of those people there have actually risen themselves. But when Jesus starts to speak, after his first statement, which is, my peace be with you, that's his first statement after he's risen, he says to them again, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you. When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, receive the Holy Spirit. Now that word that catches my attention so strongly here is receive. Receive as a verb, as an action, as a doing, as a resurrecting experience. Receive as the movement from being a mere witness, the audience, to being a participant in the event. So if we go back to those metaphors I offered, you know, let's say you're watching some musicians make some music. What happens when they invite you up to join them in making music? I've been a part of a couple of drum circles, not as a drummer, but as a dancer. And I can remember one in particular where the drummers invited us to come up and take over the drumming. Now, it's incredible. The drumming, the gift, the skill, and I don't have it. I'm not a drummer. I'm not a musician. It was pretty intimidating to have that invitation to go up there and to play on the drums, but I took it. And it was a totally different energy and experience. Once I started to actually get onto the drum and try to make the music, it was very different, even from being the dancer, let alone just the hearer of the music. Have you ever been invited to go from being the audience to being the actor? Maybe in a church service, if you were asked to come up and participate, to do a reading or carry a candle, particularly a church service where you thought you weren't going to do anything. Or maybe in a classroom, and you know the experience of when the teacher calls on you and actually asks you to stand up and say something. And you go from being the person consuming the lesson to the person sharing the lesson. Or it could be as simple as being at a relative's house or a friend's house, and they're making the dinner for you, and you go and say, "Can I help?" And then all of a sudden you're taking over a whole meal or cooking part of the meal in the kitchen. And you go from being someone who's just consuming the food to someone who's producing the food. Some of the most interesting writing and thinking that I've done since my time in divinity school has discussed the difference between being a consumer and a producer. It's one thing to buy your vegetables. It's another thing to grow them yourself. A lot of folks during this stay-at-home time are absent the experience of shopping. And a lot of people who are absent the experience of shopping don't know what to do. Shopping can really define a lot of people, and it can define a lot of our schedules. It can be a lot of what people just do. But if we aren't consumers, we can become producers. And the two things are very different. Jesus' invitation is to go beyond being the witness. That's why he says, what happened to me will happen to you. You have the same role now to fulfill. In John 14:12, he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these." So are we called to merely consume the story of the resurrection? Are we just going to be readers of it, or celebrators of it, or witnesses to it? Are we just the audience for a yearly retelling of a story we all remember from childhood, those of us who were raised in the church? In this time of COVID, we talk often in my house about the state of the world. And we can read about it and see that there's a longing among many people to go back to the way things were. The question is that what we really want? After Jesus died, many, many people wanted to go back to the way things were. They wanted him dead, gone, buried, and forgotten. That's how the political powers wanted it. That's how the religious leaders wanted it. They didn't want a new way of life. They didn't want a new order. They didn't want a new way of thinking. But was the resurrection simply a play? Was it like that Hamilton production, which was amazing? Was it something to just see and admire and be moved by? Something to talk about and remember and be affected by? Or was it an invitation to come onto the stage? My question is, will you allow yourself to truly experience the season of Easter as transformative? It is more than a day, and it's more than a week, and it's actually more than a month. Will you allow yourself to be transformed by the experience of stay at home? Or will we wait with bated breath for it to be over so that life can go back to normal? What is normal? What is normal? Is normal the right to shop? Is it the right to shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Is it the right to drive anywhere or fly anywhere despite our climate crisis? Is it the right to take for granted the necessities of life? Is it the right to turn away from information and believe whimsical opinions? Christ did not come to live and die and rise again so that people could go back to business as usual. The wake-up call of the resurrection was earth-shakingly incredible. It was the incarnation of God, the great I am, the great universal oneness, as flesh, And it came to interrupt our ordinary life and to disrupt our ordinary life completely and to usher in a new time, a new day, and a new way of thinking. So in order to allow this to happen for ourselves, both using Easter and the experience of COVID-19, we must receive. Receive. That's what Jesus says. Receive. He asks that we not just witness the miracle and, oh, this is amazing what happened, but receive into ourselves the experience of what's called the Holy Spirit, which is the presence of the Christ energy within us. You know, the words are old, but the meaning is powerful, sustainable, and available, not just in this tradition, but in every tradition. And by receiving, we're invited to become participants in the drama, drawn into the story of rising again, not as this sort of other-oriented activity, but as a personal experience. So you may well be saying to me, okay, what can I receive during COVID-19? This is a really terrible time. And it is a terrible time. It's a terrible time. And there have been many terrible times throughout history. Horrible, cruel, grief-filled. I don't have rose-colored glasses on. And I'm quite certain that the followers of Jesus, who stood at the cross and watched him being crucified, for them it was a terrible time. Not just the death of a man or a person, but the death of a dream and a hope and a belief and an idea and a way of thinking. The death of a future for them. It is our job, it's our job as people to make a redemptive event out of the circumstances of our lives. We need to make a real event, not a story. We are the people Christ asked to carry the resurrection as living embodiment. So go tell the people. That's what the Gospels say. Heal the people, love the people, help the people. Tell them what you have seen. But you can't tell, and you can't do any of that really with your words and your mouth, as you and I both know. You can do it a little bit that way, but you don't really convert people that way. You don't change people's hearts that way. Words, it's good. It's nice, the pretty words. I hope you enjoy this sermon. But ultimately, it's just a bunch of words. To receive resurrection is to allow it to live inside us. So right now, we can resist change. We can long for the former order because it's familiar, but every single crisis presents the opportunity to see what was wrong before and invite us into a new era with a new way of thinking. Can the resurrection come into the time of COVID-19? In fact, it can come no other way. It doesn't come any other way. The resurrection didn't come into the land of paradise with roses blooming and everybody fed. That doesn't happen, and it didn't happen. We don't need to somehow imagine that in our suffering we can't be with Easter. That's not even what Easter was. We need to find in the midst of trial that somebody's still inviting us to receive a blessing. Resurrection only comes with the death and crucifixion. But we are being asked to receive this invitation. And that means you take it, right? You actually take it. You take it and you use it. You take it and you eat it. You take it and you own it. You take it and you keep it. You take it and you make it yours. You take it and you live it. You take it and you let it come live inside of you. So get up on the stage. Get up on the stage. Take the instrument. It doesn't matter how old or young you are, and it doesn't matter what we actually ultimately believe or the details of our theology with one another. It doesn't matter if we're filled with doubt or uncertainty or we're scared or we're lonely. The invitation doesn't float onto us like a beautiful dove on the perfect day when everything's going well. It's extended to each of us to go from being consumers of life, of stories, of God, of religion, of spirituality, to these spectators, right? It's an invitation to go from being the spectator of life and just the audience of love to being co-creators with God, producers of that love, and to be those who are rising with Christ lovers and livers and infused with the Holy Spirit. So may it be so for each of us, for me and for you. And may we accept it. May we rise together, remembering the power and love of the power of love and good as the greatest power on the earth. It's one without equal. It's our rock, our support, and it's not separate from us. It's the same. It's within us. The same inside of me as it is inside of you, as it is inside of Christ. And it's our hope and our future. Receive and let it live. Amen.